the last section of our notes. So 1.5, day 3. It's the second to last page that we're starting on today. Page 16. Going to be starting off with a couple of definitions today. Now these definitions are going to sound familiar to ones we've already talked about so far, because really they are. We have talked about a version of these definitions already. The only difference between what we talked about initially and what we're talking about today is if we are talking about angles versus segments. So, two angles that have the same measure are congruent angles. We're on page 16 of the notes packet. We talked about congruent segments already. Definition was two segments that have the same measure. So it's really not that big of a difference. What you are going to see that's a little bit different is notation. When it comes to segments that are congruent, you'd see the segment drawn and then you'd see the little tick marks on it indicating that these things are the same length. Can't put those tick marks on angles. Angles don't have just singular segments. They have rays. You don't really want to talk about the rays because of the fact that the rays could actually be shortened to segments, and this notation would get confusing. So when it comes to seeing that angles are congruent, if you want to see it in a picture, you mark it inside the angle with a little arc. Those are the little angle marks that indicate that those angles are congruent. Now, if angles are congruent, that means they have equal measure. Remember, when you're talking about the measurement of an angle, you need to put the little m in front of its name. Versus if we are saying that the angles are congruent, you just call the angle by name and reference that it has that congruent feature. And remember, the congruent symbol is that equal sign with a squiggle above it. Yes, Eli? Yes, because of the fact that angles are named by points, they're always going to have capital letters. The one exception to that rule, Eli, is when you have an angle named by a number. But if it's letters, it's always got to be capital letters. It could be single letter, it could be the triple letter name, or it could be the number name. But it's going to be capital letters when it's letters. Now we talk about congruent angles. We're on page 16. We talk about congruent angles a lot and the fact that they are equal and we can make equations with them. And we also talk about angle bisectors. Which take an angle and cut it into two congruent angles. To bisect means to cut into two congruent parts. When you're cutting an angle into two congruent parts, you're cutting it into two congruent angles. So let's say I've got this angle right here. I'm going to name it angle A, B, C. A bisector would be a ray, is the traditional, but it could be a segment, it could be a line, but it has to go smack dab through the middle of the interior of that angle. I'm going to put point D on that ray, and when you do this, it creates these two angles that are congruent. Now, one of the things you're going to notice that I do is when I mark angles congruent, if they're right next to one another, it's called adjacent, technically, you're always going to see me make that angle mark slightly off from one another. That way it doesn't look, that way it doesn't look like I just made one mark going all the way across. I want to differentiate them. So I kind of offset them a little bit. Now, if this is my picture, I would write this out as BD, the ray, bisects angle ABC. Now, I write this out because one of the most common things that I see throughout geometry is that when they see this, when they see BD bisects angle ABC, is a lot of the time say, okay, this goes through the middle, therefore that ray and that ray are congruent. No. People mix up what the bisect means. This is what got cut into two congruent angles. So we got to be careful on that. It's one of the most common mistakes. So, today you're going to see questions that start off with telling you something bisects an angle. TR bisects angle STU. If I give you that information, that the angle drawn, if there is one, is angle STU. If I'm going to call this angle STU, am I picky about where the S, the T, or the U go? Picky where the T goes. T has to go at the middle, at the vertex, at the pointy part. I don't care which side S goes on, which side U goes on, you just got to make a choice there. It got bisected, so you're going to draw a ray going through the middle. That is ray TR. Now, if that is ray TR, it's got to have the T on it, but it also needs the R. And when you see bisect, you draw that and then automatically mark these two things as congruent. Okay, I am looking to find the measure of angle STU, but I give you the measure of angle STR.
STU is the same as angle STR.
They're not the
Wait,
same.
no, it's where you, because
Okay, key thing you gotta pay attention to is where these angles are. STR, is it the one on the left, the one on the right, or the big one? It's the one on the left. That's 28 degrees. Angle STU, is it the one on the right, or is it the big one?
big one.
It's the big one. I'm looking for the measure from all the way across.
Degrees because it's congruent to
Yes.
get the angle all the way across.
These two are congruent. If only one of them's marked, I can call the other one the same thing. That one's 28, that means this one is 28. And according to the angle addition postulate, angle plus angle makes the big angle. 56, is that what I heard? Measure angle STU equals 56 degrees. Don't forget to go back in and put the proper notation. If you're telling me an angle's measure, it's got to have the M. If you're telling me its name, then it doesn't have the M. But if you're telling me its name, you can't tell me what it's equal to. If I didn't have the M here, that'd be like saying the angle's name is 56. It's like calling you 16 just because you're 16 years old, that I can say, hey, 16, and expect you to answer. Okay. If BE bisects angle FBD. I'm going to my name cards. Because I tend to hear from the same people a lot, and I want to pick more brains than just a couple. Okay, this angle better be the angle FBD, because it's the only angle I talk about in the setup. Jocelyn, which letter am I picky about its location? B. Gotta be here. Don't care about the F or the D. They have to each be on a ray. BE bisects it. So I'm going to draw a ray that goes directly through the middle. And I put E on it. What else did I miss? congruency marks. If you see bisect, put those congruency marks, because sometimes you'll draw a picture that looks like that, aka these ones, that don't have the word bisect, and you got to approach differently. So when it's there, put it there. Measure of angle FBE is 4x plus 6. Ella, is FBE the one on the left, the one on the right, or the big one? You got it. 4x plus 16. Noah, the measure of angle EBD is 6x plus 4. Is EBD the one on the right or the big one? The one on the right. This time I've got something labeled on both of these. But I have them marked as congruent. And congruent is just a fancy way of saying they are equal or the same. So I set them equal. 4x plus 16 is equal to 6x plus 4. Stephen, if I want to solve this, where are you going to tell me to start?
Surface switching the 4x.
Repeat that?
So we're subtracting the 4x from
Got it.
the left side.
I heard switching the 4x, and I'm like, switching it?
No,
Got it, subtracting. I'm just deaf. It's fine.
2x plus 4.
So I get 16 equals 2x plus 4. Muhammad, what do I do next in solving for this?
Subtract the 4 from the 16.
Dude, is your name Muhammad? Okay, we're going to subtract the 4. But, Muhammad, I'm coming back to you on the next one. 12 is equal to 2x. Muhammad, now what do I do to solve for the x? Divide by 2. I get 6 equal to x, aka x equals 6.
That's my fault. We're going too slow.
Is that what we're trying to solve for?
No.
No, I gotta plug it back in. I'm looking for the measure of angle FBD. Do I have an expression for FBD?
No, but you have
40.
technically an answer to figure out between the two, which if you pick one, either one, let's do 6x plus 4, you swap the x out for a 6, and then you times the x, or not the x, the 6 by 6, which gives you 36, and you plus the 4, which gives you 40. And then you do 40 plus 40, which gives you 80, so the whole answer is 80 degrees.
Yes. Now, if you missed the initial piece of that, essentially, these two are the same. If these two are the same, you can plug back into either of them. It'll give you a half. And then you can assume that the other one's the same.
That looks like an opposite segment.
You know what? Maybe I should just be quiet and let the teacher teach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Alice said I was talking too fast.
You did go a little fast. Okay, but again,
I'm gonna freak. My bad.
I'm going to talk about that. Bear with me. Okay, again, when these two are congruent, you can plug back into either one of them. It'll give you 1/2. The other half's the same. Add the two halves together. Now, you might notice that this angle definitely doesn't look like an 80-degree angle. It looks obtuse. The picture is just there to give you a guideline of where things are. It's not meant to be a perfect picture. Sometimes you're just going to have to deal with it.
That's gonna make me go insane.
Okay, then let's flip the page and move away from the one that's making you go insane.
If it happened on the homework, I'm literally gonna like crash out.
Okay, sometimes it's not going to give you any sense of the picture. Now, if it doesn't give you any sense of the picture, then you're going to have to be okay with your picture not being perfect. So, DP bisects angle FDE. Start off with the bigger thing. Is a ray bigger or is an angle bigger? Technically, bigger is the wrong word, but there's more to an angle, so I start with it. Lily, when I'm naming an angle, what am I picky about? Goes in the middle. Middle letter goes in the middle of the angle, goes at the vertex. I see bisect, so I'm going through the middle. And I don't forget these markings because they make a difference. Jerry, I'm told that the measure of angle FDP is 2x plus 7. Is that the first little one, the second little one, or the big one? First little one. Johnny, I'm told that the measure of angle FDE is 6x plus 6. Is that the second little one, or is that the big one?
Big one.
Yes. That's the one that goes all the way across. If this one's the little one and that one's the full one, do I set them equal?
No.
No!
No, you have to do, wait.
If I have two things that are congruent, only one of which is marked, the unmarked one can get called the same thing. I have two angles right next to one another building this bigger angle. Nick, how do I make an equation that I can solve?
Add the two small angles equal to
Add the two small angles, set it equal to the big one. 2x plus 7 plus 2x plus 7 is equal to 6x plus 6. Kane, where do I start in solving this? What's it going to look like? Don't mind me, I got distracted for a second. 4x plus 14 equals 6x plus 6.
Okay, can we not draw sticks? I'll do the answers. This is moving way too slow.
Go for a walk real quick. Be back in 5 minutes. Vivian, if I want to solve this, what would you tell me to do? Minus 6x. Negative 2x plus 14 is equal to 6. There are other ways to do it. If you subtracted 4x, you should get the same final answer. Max, what would I do now?
Sorry, you didn't go the way I wrote it.
I did it differently than what you were doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happens. But if we're trying to get x alone,
Minus 14.
exactly, you know how to do it.
Yeah,
I just
a
tripped you
second.
up because I did it a different way. Negative 2x equals, we got a calculator for that, negative 8. And to finish it off, ladies and gentlemen, what would we do? Divide by negative 2. X is 4. Is that what I was solving for? No, if it said solve for x, we'd be done. It did not say solve for x. It said find the measure of angle FDE. Trevor, if I'm looking for FDE, which expression do I plug back into? Yeah, because FDE is the big one, so the 6x plus 6. That's 24 plus 6. The measure of angle FDE is therefore gonna have you try the last one out on your own. I will be coming around and checking your answers. Once you've got the right answer, I will give you the homework assignment for the day. I'm gonna solve it up here so that those who are using the video have it in the video for them. So I'll be walking around here shortly. I just had everyone try out the last problem on their own, and